Monsieur Boorman, bienvenue à la Cinémathèque française. Nous sommes ravis de vous accueillir cet après-midi après la projection de Délivrance. Et Michel Simon et moi-même allons avoir cette discussion avec vous. La première chose que j'avais envie depuis que j'ai vu ce film il y a longtemps, mais en le revoyant encore, c'est mais que veut dire le titre? Que veut dire délivrance? C'est la délivrance de qui et la délivrance de quoi?
Well, the film was based on a novel by James Dickey, and the deliverance was these four urban men from Atlanta living rather comfortable lives, but not really exploring their manhood, and that this journey, it delivers them from their comfortable lives into something deeper and more profound.
Mais est-ce qu'il y a une autre délivrance dans le film? Est-ce que, par exemple, vous seriez d'accord pour dire que des 4 hommes, le personnage principal est celui joué par John Voight, qui, lui, fait vraiment un parcours?
Yes. Well, you have, with these 4 men, you have, Voight is the comfortable family man, and Reynolds' character is, Lewis, is the survivalist, the one who really wants to get in a situation where he can actually his real ambition is to have the experience of killing someone, and it is the mild character of John Voight character who eventually becomes a heroic figure who because the Lewis character collapses. He breaks a leg and he's impotent. So I think, Dickey and I got on very well on the whole, but we disagreed about certain things. One was that at the ending, Dickey's view was that these men were liberated by the experience and became whole and they achieved their manhood, whereas I felt that the experience was a haunting nightmare. That's why at the end of the film, you see John Voight waking up with a nightmare of this hand rising out of the water.
Justement, je voulais déjà vous poser cette question par rapport à vos films précédents, Point Blank, Hell in the Pacific, Leo the Last. C'était des films dont l'origine littéraire était moins respectable, ou en tout cas, ce n'étaient pas des mauvais livres, mais ce n'étaient pas des choses importantes. Là, il avait affaire à un classique moderne, un livre très, très réussi littérairement. Donc, il fallait à la fois respecter le livre et en même temps, comme il vient de le dire, de se distinguer de Dickey et ne pas adhérer au côté Hemingway de Dickey, au côté la régénération par la violence, qui est un thème américain. On se régénère par la violence, par la loi du pistolet ou des arcs.
The first third of the novel described these 4 men in their lives in Atlanta and with their families and their jobs. And so Dickey's view was that the film should follow that course, that we should meet them in their homes and workplaces. And I argued that, with a movie it's different, that you cast these 4 men, and in the way they're cast and the way they play their characters, you get to know them. You don't need to see them in their environment. So I started the film with the men arriving up in the mountains.
Est-ce vrai que vous aviez imaginé, j'imagine, dans les deux rôles principaux, Marlon Brando et Lee Marvin pour ce film?
No, no. Originally, Warner Brothers, who financed the film, they weren't really very confident about the film, so they said to me, "We'll do it if you can find two major stars." So I went to Jack Nicholson, who was a rising star at the time, and he agreed to play the part, the John Voight part. And then Jack said to me, who are you thinking of the other role? And I said, well, I'm not really very clear. But he said, what about Brando? They were friends, Brando and Nicholson. So I went to see Brando, who at that time hadn't made a film for several years. And I spent the day with him, which was a memorable occasion. We talked about everything. And I'd made this film in Hell in the Pacific. And when I went to, and Brando, of course, had this island also in the Pacific. And when I arrived, he said to me, we should look at each other for half an hour before we speak. Well, I just made a film in a Pacific island, and I knew that the people of the Pacific would never speak to you until they got to know you. That is to say, they'd sit and look at you and smile, and only when they felt they kind of got to know you would they speak. So it was a familiar thing for me. So I sat there looking at Marlon Brando for about 20 minutes. And then we talked about acting, we talked about the deliverance, and by the end of the day, which was a memorable day because we spoke of so many things, particularly about acting, he said he would do it. And I said to him, who's your agent? He said, I don't have an agent anymore. He said, I haven't made a film for a long time, and I don't have an agent. So I said, well, how much do you want to play in the film? He said, I don't have a price. So he said, I'll tell you what, pay me the same as you pay Jack. I said, okay. So I went to Jack's agent, and I said, what do you want for me to pay Jack? And he said $500,000. And I said, $500,000? He's never been paid more than $50,000 for a movie. You know, he'd made 5 easy pieces, and the agent said, well, he's a big rising star, and that's what we want. So I went to the head of the studio and I said, well, you said get 2 major stars in order to make the film. And I said, I've got Jack Nicholson and Marlon Brando. So they were quite pleased about Jack Nicholson, but Marlon Brando at that time was before he played The Godfather, and they said, Marlon Brando is finished. He has, he's box office poison. He said, well, how much does Jack Nicholson want? I said, he wants $500,000. $500,000 for Jack Nicholson? This is ridiculous. And he's never been paid more than $50,000. I said, I know that, but that's what he wants. So, and what about Brando then? What are you paying Brando? I said, well, I agreed to pay him the same as Jack. He said, get out of my office. And when things settled down, he said, okay, well, make the picture for $2 million with unknowns, and then we'll do it. So I toured around the regional theatres, and I found Ronnie Cox and Ned Beatty, and then eventually I got John Voight and Burt Reynolds to make up the foursome, and they all worked for very little money, and Voight in particular he'd done Midnight Cowboy, and then he did a film called The All-American Boy, which was a disaster, and they couldn't cut it together. So Voight had been in the Catholic seminary before he started acting, and he was so disappointed in his career as an actor that he was thinking of going back into the seminary. I tried to persuade him to do the film, and he couldn't make up his mind. We talked endlessly about it, and he still couldn't make up his mind. And in the end, I said to him, we were on the phone, I said, John, listen, I've got to move on here. I'm going to count to 10, and if you haven't said yes by the end of the time I've counted 10, I'm going to put the phone down and I'm going to cast somebody else. So he said, well, why 10? Why not at least give me 30, count to 30. So I counted to 10 and he didn't answer, so I put the phone down. And then about 10 minutes later he phoned back and he said, this is not the way to cast an actor. he said, this is, I don't recognize your methods at all. I think we should go on talking. I said, I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm not. And so he then said, okay, I'll do it. And then the very first shot of the film, I had the camera on him, and we did the take, and I said, okay, we'll move on now. He said, well, that's only one take. I said, yes, that's right. That's what, you should be ready to. He was used to doing 10 or 15 takes just to get kind of move into it. So it was very interesting, the dynamics between those four actors. They were really incredibly brave in making this film, and they were, and I treated them like horses that had to be broken. One last point about that, because John Voight told everybody afterwards, he said, I was in despair, and John convinced me to do this picture, and he saved my life. And then he spent 10 weeks trying to kill me.
Ce qui est frappant, évidemment, c'est le côté extrêmement spectaculaire du film au point de vue de l'action physique. Et si j'ai une bonne information, je crois que toutes les scènes de canoë ont été en fait faites avec une équipe de 8 personnes, dont les 4 acteurs. 4 acteurs, le metteur en scène, le chef-op et 2 techniciens. Est-ce que c'est... Parce que c'est assez exceptionnel pour une production Warner. Hein.
Yes, well, certainly the river scenes were done with a very small crew. We would the actors would have their lunch in a plastic bag, sealing it off from the water, and the cameraman, myself, and a grip, and we shot it in a very with a very small crew. And I didn't even record sound. And there was one rather awful moment when I cut the film together, and then because I hadn't recorded any sound, I put my voice on all 4 characters. So as a guide for them to do their post dialogue. And when they came in and watched my voice on all these 4 characters, they were so appalled, and they couldn't stop laughing, and I had great difficulty in getting them to work.
On dit souvent que John Ford choisissait de tourner à Monument Valley parce que comme ça, il était loin des studios et des gens qui décident. Et personne comme ça ne pouvait l'empêcher de faire son film. Est-ce que pour vous aussi, qui étiez un Anglais à Hollywood, qui aviez fait Point Blank, vous aviez eu des difficultés avec le studio, est-ce que le fait de tourner des films loin dans la nature, en pleine nature, bien sûr ça correspond à votre goût, mais est-ce que ce n'était pas aussi une stratégie pour faire le film que vous vouliez?
Well, it certainly helps that it became very intimate between the four actors and myself and the landscape and the river, that we were alone really, and a long way from Hollywood and all the kind of restraints that go with that. So it was liberating for all of us.
Bien sûr, c'est un goût britannique de beaucoup d'écrivains, sont des grands voyageurs. Les Anglais sont des grands voyageurs. Mais d'où vient cette propension chez vous à aller tourner en Afrique du Sud, en Birmanie, ou en tout cas dans le sud-est asiatique, dans le Pacifique, dans les rivières, les torrents des Appalaches? Il y a tout de même une vocation chez vous à aller, ou Excalibur, même des scènes d'action très, très fortes.
Well, I think that I always had a sense of adventure, but also I was always drawn very strongly to the wilderness, whether it was the Amazon forest or whether it was great rivers or, you know, all the experiences I had, like living with a Stone Age tribe in the Amazon, in the Xingu, or experiencing the teak forest in the mountains of Burma. These were memorable and wonderful things. I was so privileged to have experienced them.
Mais au moment où vous faites ce tournage de Délivrance, vous tournez avec le directeur de la photographie Vilmos Zsigmond. Et vous êtes donc, comme vous disiez, une toute petite équipe. Comment vous avez préparé ce tournage et quelles étaient les grandes règles à respecter pour que le film se fasse?
It's important to cast a cameraman as much as to cast an actor. Certainly, Vilmos Zsigmond was a tough, wiry, and adventurous character, you know, who'd escaped the Russian tanks in Budapest in the 56, and he was exactly the sort of person who I needed in a film like this, whereas he couldn't have made Zardos, for instance. You know, he didn't have the poetry, but so you have to cast the cameraman, I think, and it's not, and I think that that's not generally understood. Jeffrey Unsworth, who shot Zardos and also 2001 and many other films, a great poet of light, and he wouldn't have lasted 10 minutes in Deliverance.
Maybe a last question on Deliverance. It's not finished, but just on Deliverance. About the music, you know, and also your conception of film music, but particularly in this film where you have only the dueling banjo, which runs through the film.
Well, I've spoken about the budget difficulties of making Deliverance, and the studio were constantly trying to get me to make it cheaper and cheaper. And in the end, the only thing I had left to cut was I had money in for an orchestra and a composer. And I had already decided to use dueling banjos as a theme for the score. And so I decided to cut the composer and cut the orchestra, and then just get two musicians in to do variations on dueling banjos, and that became the whole score. I think the relationship between film and film music is a very difficult and interesting one. I think particularly today, orchestral scores often overwhelm films, particularly with, for instance, a lot of films of Scorsese and Coppola and so forth often have a score which starts with the first frame of the film and goes on right through to the end.
Mais juste pour vraiment conclure sur Délivrance provisoirement et cette scène du banjo, c'est vrai, c'est une des scènes les plus connues de votre œuvre, c'est une des scènes les plus légendaires. Est-ce que aussi c'est parce qu'elle contient, sans qu'on puisse peut-être le décrypter sans vous, mais en tout cas elle contient quelque chose de la vérité du film? C'est comme une maquette à l'intérieur du film, du sens du film.
Yes, well, the scene at the beginning of Deliverance where they meet this filling gas station where this boy is playing the banjo, and there's a connection between Drew and the boy through the music, and they play against each other in a kind of conversation. And that becomes a sort of metaphor for the whole film. And subsequently you see the boy on the bridge watching them go down the river. And it's somehow, it's the connection they make with the mountain people. And that connection is broken. And then, of course, it resumes when they meet the mountain men who kill and seduce them.
Il y a un autre film de vous, tourné et réalisé plus de 10 ans après Délivrance, qui est La forêt d'émeraude, et qui semble une sorte de continuation ou de film jumeau ou de film en écho avec Délivrance. Et en même temps, quand on voit La forêt d'émeraude, et vous avez consacré un livre au récit du tournage, on se dit, mais où trouve-t-il la force ou l'inconscience de se mettre dans de telles histoires?
Well, in the Emerald Forest, the tribe where the boy, we see the boy disappears into the forest. He's taken by a tribe, and the father spends 10 years every vacation searching for the boy, who is taken in by this very primal tribe. And the tribe is so integrated into the whole notion of the forest. They become a kind of metaphor for the forest. And so you have a man, an urban engineer from the modern world, deeply connecting or attempting to connect with the forest as expressed by the tribe.
On a le sentiment, que ce soit dans La forêt d'émeraude ou un document, enfin un autoportrait que vous avez fait qui s'appelle I Dreamed I Woke Up, on a le sentiment que vous avez je dirais un regret profond, même Excalibur d'une certaine manière, un regret profond du temps d'avant la révolution industrielle.
I suppose that's true, yes. I think somehow the evolution of mankind into the industrial age and beyond, the industrial age seems to be actually a passing point towards the evolution of the robots. And so I think the further away we move from the natural world, the more treacherous our lives become. So once we lose the connection to the natural world, we lose our footing and our grip on reality.
Mais d'ailleurs, la remarque de Bernard sur son goût justement d'une époque précédant la révolution industrielle est sûrement pertinente dans la mesure où lui-même, depuis 45 ans, a choisi de vivre en Irlande, qui est un pays de mythes, de poètes, et où il a tourné plusieurs films, Zardoz, Excalibur, The General, Tiger's Tale. Donc ça s'exprime aussi dans sa vie.
Yes, I suppose my retreat to Ireland, where I have lived for the last 47 years, is, as Michel says, it's in Ireland, with its mysticism and its mists, as you said, it's still somewhat protected from a great deal of what's happened in other parts of the world.
Peut-être que dans votre film autobiographique, Open Glory se divise en deux parties, et la deuxième partie se déroule là où vous êtes né, c'est-à-dire aux environs de Ashepton, dans la banlieue de Londres, et c'est une enfance directement en contact. Alors là, il n'y a pas de séparation entre l'homme et son environnement, entre l'homme et la nature. Mais sans doute que dans ces expériences enfantines, quelque chose d'un rapport, d'un acte d'amour avec la nature s'est noué.
It's often said that I was born in Shepperton, and I actually wasn't born in Shepperton. I was born in London, really. But as you say about Hope and Glory, the first half is about my experiences as a child in the London Blitz, and then the escape to the river at Shepperton. So this back into the world of nature. So, if you like, my childhood was a kind of mirror of what I've been talking about, which is from the urban world, which included war, to the peace and river and countryside of that second half of the film.
On va regarder, si vous le voulez bien, un extrait de Hope and Glory, mais qui appartient donc à la première partie du film et qui raconte, avec l'extrait que nous avons choisi d'un commun accord, qui raconte ou qui donne une impression de ce qu'ont été vos années d'enfance. Donc on regarde cet extrait qui se déroule dans les ruines de Londres et où un garçon, en tout cas...
Yes, I should say, this is the scene with the gang, the boys, the children, and it's that the little boy, who is my surrogate, has heard someone calling out the word fuck, and that you need to know that before you see this clip.
Do you know any swear words? Yes. Say them. Go on. Say them. You can't join if you can't swear. I only know one. Say that one then. Go on. Fuck. That word is special. That word is only used for something really important. Now repeat after me. Bugger off.
Oui, Open Glory. Dans Open Glory, il y a une autre séquence où on vous voit, enfant, jouant avec des petits soldats de plomb qui sont les chevaliers de la table ronde. Et évidemment, c'est très intéressant parce que je pense que c'est très fidèle à votre enfance. Et votre intérêt pour le Graal est dans une certaine mesure... Presque tous vos films racontent une sorte de quête, c'est-à-dire des personnages qui sont à la recherche de quelque chose et qui sont transformés par le voyage. C'est-à-dire que les personnages ne sont jamais les mêmes à la fin du récit qu'au début. Il y a quelque chose qui les transforme.
Yes, I do show this very early on in Hope and Glory, where the boy is playing with these little soldiers and things, and amongst them are the knights of King Arthur, and I had those as a child, and it's interesting that the myth of the Arthurian myth is so ingrained into British life, really, is that no one can ever tell you when they first heard that story. It was, I think that this story, this myth, the Arthurian legend, is somehow absorbed with your mother's milk, because nobody ever can tell you when they first heard that story. So I was one in a long line of storytellers who told a version of that story.
Mais c'est vrai qu'une de vos caractéristiques à travers vos films, et on l'entend encore aujourd'hui, c'est à quel point vous aimez conter et raconter des histoires. Et que vraiment, même si on peut dire que dans un film comme Point Blank, la narration est déconstruite, vous avez quand même un goût inaltérable pour le récit. Mais pour prolonger la question de Michel Simon, en quoi vous diriez, puisque ça va être ensuite effectivement le trajet de vos personnages, en quoi vous diriez que la guerre vous a profondément changé et transformé à jamais?
Well, I think you raise the question of what the need, or the importance of stories. I think that because the world we live in is chaotic and ruled by chance, we have a great need for myths, legends, stories that will help to explain or put some kind of shape into the world we live in. When I'm at home in Ireland and I sit outside in a deck chair watching my trees grow, and there's no wind, it's a calm, lovely day, and it's easy to forget that you're hurtling around the sun at 8 kilometers a second. But that's the world we live in. And stories are what saves us from insanity.
Il y a plusieurs tendances dans le cinéma britannique, mais deux particulièrement, qui sont une qui est plutôt dominante dans les films d'auteur, c'est le réalisme, qui a été illustré par le free cinema et par Mike Leigh, Ken Loach, et l'autre qui est un monde plus de l'imaginaire, du fantastique, comme des gens comme Michael Powell. Et ce qui est intéressant dans sa filmographie, c'est qu'il a commencé à être remarqué par des documentaires très bons, excellents, tournés pour la télévision, comme Citizen 63, qui était un portrait de 6 personnes réelles. Il en a filmé 3. Et puis, par exemple, The Newcomers, qui était la vie d'un couple pendant 6 heures à Bristol. Et pourtant, son cinéma allait devenir complètement différent, aller justement vers l'imagination, parfois le fantastique, en tout cas la poésie. Et comment s'est passé ce changement de quitter une tradition pour retrouver d'autres racines?
I started making documentaries for the BBC, and they were largely about people and places. But little by little, I became frustrated by naturalism. And my documentaries gradually became dramatized and more to do with the imagination. So when I started to make fiction films, I felt liberated from naturalism and more and more towards really, I think film aspires to the condition of poetry at its best. And I still feel that the film is not as evolved as much as it can be. I think that film is very much connected to dream, to the unconscious. And when we're watching film, D.H. Lawrence described it when the coal miners in Nottingham watching film, and they're watching with their mouths gaping open and their eyes wide, and it's as though they're entering some kind of dream. And it looks very often, you look at a cinema audience, that they look as though they're in trance, some kind of trance. And I think at its best, as an audience, part of an audience myself, I think that moment where you lose your grip on reality and you are sucked into the film and out of your life into a spiritual world is wonderful. One of the great experiences that we can have.
C'est sans doute en Occident, en tout cas, ce qui nous permet le plus de nous rapprocher d'expériences chamaniques telles que vous avez pu en vivre dans la jungle.
Yes, you know, when I lived with this tribe in the Xingu region of the Amazon, and the shaman, who was a very famous shaman with enormous powers and much feared, and he asked me what I did, and I found it very difficult to describe film to someone who'd never seen a film or watched television. And so I said, well, it's a way of seeing the world. You can see a face close up, and you can see a landscape, and you can go back into the past, you can go into the future. And he said, oh, yes. He said, well, that's exactly what I do. And he said, you know, we do the same thing altogether. There is a very strong relationship between, because I experienced it myself, of going into trance with this shaman, and the experience of trance is very much like watching a movie.
Mais en même temps, si on l'écoutait seulement parler de ces choses, on pourrait penser que son cinéma n'est pas en rapport avec les problèmes du monde. Or, ces films sont aussi très ancrés dans la réalité. Léo the Last est une fable sur le monde développé et le monde sous-développé, les pauvres et les riches. Il y a la Birmanie avec Aung San Suu Kyi, il y a les procès vérité et réconciliation en Afrique du Sud, il y a les multinationales dans Point Blank. Enfin, c'est aussi un commentaire politique sur le monde.
Yes, I think that you mentioned Leo the Last, and indeed one or two other films that I've made where I'm contrasting the affluent, sophisticated world with a rather primitive element, the gap between rich and poor, and so on. This is one of the themes that I seem to come back to, but it's in that connection between those two worlds, that in that gap in between is where you can find the world of the spirit. And that's what I've tried to do anyway. I've tried to make those connections between the geopolitical and the spiritual.
Pour montrer je dirais votre rapport au monde contemporain, et pour commencer, on conclura par là. On va regarder un deuxième et dernier extrait très court d'un film que vous avez fait dans les années 90 et qui s'appelle The General. Et on regarde l'extrait, et après ou avant, vous nous expliquerez de quoi est-il question à propos de ce personnage et pourquoi il vous a tant séduit. Et on conclura avec cet extrait et ce film.
Well, the general, Martin Keogh, he was a rather famous Irish gangster who was very intelligent, and he when he made his various attacks on society, they were always done with a sense of humor, and also by it wasn't enough for him to make a lot of money or steal a lot of jewelry. He also had to make fools of the police. And my view of him is he related very much to the old Irish chieftains who were always stealing each other's cattle, and also done with a certain sense of humor.
That's up to here. I can sleep at night. I've seen you outside me flat there a few times. Oh. Well, you should hop in the next time you're past. Have an old jar.
Right, Robbie, across the street. Come on. There's healthy pints. Come on, hurry up.
Disgrace to the profits being pints on egg.
Well, that's an example of what I was saying of his cruel wit and his desire to always make fools of the police.
Avant de poser une dernière question qui a trait à l'autobiographie, je crois qu'il y a même un moment où vos deux vies se sont rencontrées, Martin Cahill et vous.
Yes, one of the reasons I wanted to make this a film about this character was that he burgled my house and he took, one of the things he took was, I had on the wall of my study framed gold records from dueling banjos, from Deliverance. And of course, so he took those because he thought they were made of gold instead of, they were just vinyl sprayed with gold paint. And so I put that scene into the film where he discovers that they're not made of gold. And so it was a way of getting my own back on him, really, that I made the film. So that was, yes, it was an example of life overtaking fiction.
Juste une chose pour que les spectateurs comprennent, parce que Martin Cahill a cette caractéristique absolument hilarante pendant tout le film, c'est qu'il met tout le temps, dans certaines occasions, sa main sur son visage. Il parle en se cachant, il parle en regardant à travers ses doigts. Pourquoi fait-il ça?
Well, he always succeeded in not being photographed, so that nobody knew what he looked like, and this is why he covered his face all the time. That was the reason.
Mais dans le film, on a l'impression que chaque fois qu'il s'adresse à une autorité, que ce soit la police, la banque, il cache son visage, comme si d'une certaine manière, il ne voulait pas dialoguer avec eux.
Yes, he kept himself, separated himself from society and the police representing society.
John Boorman s'est illustré dans tous les genres cinématographiques pour les renouveler, pour avoir une approche fraîche de ces genres. Et en même temps, à l'opposé, il a de plus en plus filmé, écrit des textes autobiographiques. Les deux films, évidemment, Hope and Glory sur son enfance, Queen and Country sur son service militaire, qui est son dernier film, mais aussi un autoportrait, I Dreamt I Woke Up, un autoportrait filmé. Il a écrit un journal de l'année où il a tourné La Forêt d'Émeraude. Il a écrit son autobiographie qui va paraître chez Marais à la rentrée. Vous pourrez la lire en français. Donc tout cela, c'est un homme visuel, mais aussi un homme qui aime les mots, la littérature. Est-ce que, visiblement, ça a été de plus en plus net dans son parcours de s'adresser à cet aspect personnel?
I think that's very true. More and more have been looking at my own life and my own ideas and thoughts in what I do, in the films that I've made, and also in the writing, in my books. And I write and direct radio plays, and also which are also very often about my own life and my own views. So I've been very fortunate in having the opportunity to explore the world around me as I have experienced it. And that's something that's been a great privilege. And I'm now writing my third memoir, and it's called Conclusions. And that will positively be the last thing I write or make. And in it, I have explored my philosophy of filmmaking, particularly, and so that maybe that might help one or two young directors in following my methods.
La rétrospective de tous vos films, tous ceux qu'on a cités et les autres, va se dérouler tout au long du mois de juin. Les spectateurs vont pouvoir découvrir ou redécouvrir la totalité de votre œuvre. Je voulais, en notre nom à la Cinémathèque et au nom de tous les spectateurs, vous remercier du fond du cœur, John Boorman, pour le temps que vous avez bien voulu nous consacrer. Merci.
I would like to thank the Cinematheque and for this great privilege of having showing all my work. It's a crowning point to my career, and thank you.